working for somebody else is so much more risky than investing on your own.
I realized that I didn't want to work for 20 to 30 years and then retire. I wanted to do it when I was much younger, and I wanted to be more in charge of my own quote unquote retirement. I don't really care about driving a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. If I want to drive one, I'll go rent one. I think buying one's kind of ridiculous. The idea of having money come in when I'm not actually physically doing something, it was phenomenal.
Today, I'm super pumped to bring on somebody who's become an expert in real estate investing. He's a student of mine that has just done tremendously well, and then now is getting into mobile home parks and storage units. Like he's growing tremendously. And on top of that, he's coming on as a master passive income coach as well. I have William Palmer on the show with me. William, thanks so much for being on the show.
Pleasure to be here, Dustin. Looking forward to it, very much so.
Did you find me through listening to the podcast?
The way that I found you was I used to be a cop, and so I was sitting there late at night, not anything to do during COVID. We weren't allowed to do very much. So I started searching just educational real estate podcasts, and yours the first one came up, and I hit play, and then I binged. I don't know how many episodes there were available at the time, probably 200 or so.
That is so cool. And then now you're on the podcast and you're a part of Master Passive Income. So let's talk about how you got started. So you were a cop before and you knew you need to make a change. Talk to us about that mindset shift of what made you really say, I'm going to dive in, because a lot of people get scared. You know, that first property can get really scary. Oh, it's risky and all that stuff, which my opinion is, working for somebody else is so much more risky than investing on your own. So talk to us about that, how you got started, what was your mindset going into it?
I'm 30 now, I was about 28, 27 and a half when I started, and it's been great. But as far as like the mind shift change, that was the big one, beyond just wanting to be able to provide for my family more steadily and not be worried about what happens if I get hurt. I'm not going to get a paycheck. I won't be able to pay my bills. So that was kind of like a big driving factor for me.
That's 100% right, because same thing for me, because I realized if I wasn't working, if I wasn't there literally making that money, just like if you had your own business where you had customers, if you weren't there literally selling that product or somebody else on that product, then you're not making money. How much better if you have something that's inanimate object like a house that literally does the work for you. Now, what made you jump into, working with me at Master Passive Income? And then how was it utilizing that process to make $250 a month in passive income? How to make sure that we're building the business first? Talk to us about all that process.
I didn't know you would end up being my coach when I started listening to your podcast, but that was one of the biggest drawing factors for me, is because I'm not in it to be wealthy. I think that's just a complete byproduct of real estate. I don't really care about driving a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. If I want to drive one, I'll go rent one. I think buying one's kind of ridiculous. That was kind of my mindset going in, and it's been great so far. As far as like jumping in and using your formula or your steps, so to speak, has been really very simple. It's nerve-wracking at first because you realize, hey, there's a lot of money involved and there's a certain amount of risk involved with investing of any kind at all, period. But if you want to grow and not stay where you're at, there is risk involved in that too. And the idea of having money come in when I'm not actually physically doing something, it was phenomenal. Quite a while, about 6 months before I even bought my first house. I've constantly felt like I am just creeping through this. I need to hurry up. But there's a certain amount of comfort level. You need to find what your comfort level is. But again, sooner or later, you're going to need to take that plunge, and you do it right and you just follow the steps, you won't regret it.
I don't want to just give you a fish and say, here you go, here's your fish. No, I really want you to not need me ever again and just be able to build this business by yourself and keep growing and then teach it to your kids. It's simple. It's not necessarily easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it, but it's simple. It's just a process that we go through. We just make sure we check everything to make sure everything connects and everything is going to be making us money. And then the property is running itself because we have property managers. Okay, talk to us about your first property that you got, and talk to us about financing and how much you bought it for, how much the passive income, and everything about that.
Yeah, so the first house, I ended up settling on Cleveland, Ohio. I ended up finding it, and the price tag originally was for $84,500. Found a property manager, did all that jazz, found one that I liked, and we started working together. I put an offer in at 50. They didn't even respond back. Didn't counteroffer, didn't anything. 2 weeks later, I come back with a $58,000 offer. We counter back and forth once or twice, and eventually, I think by the third or fourth offer on my part, they wouldn't go below 65, but I got them to 64.5. And the numbers for the house worked at $70,000. So I was saving $5,000. We went to signing and everything like that. Before they signed it, they actually came to me and said, nope, we want $70,000 before they signed it. And I was like, You're not going to get it. So it was like, come back to me when you're serious. And I walked away. And for 2.5 days, I was sweating bullets because I wanted the house. And anyway, got all the signed paperwork. It was a done deal. But as far as financing, I created the LLC and did all that stuff. And I had sold a truck and a bunch of other stuff to have a good down payment. And so I had enough that I knew I could buy one. So I remember coming back to you and I was like, I have called so many banks trying to find somebody that would do this. You were like, oh, why don't you try Lima One Capital or something like that? And so I called them and they did it. Now it was a higher interest rate, but I didn't really care. But when it was all said and done, it was cash flowing $354.86. And fast forward a year, I had my first turnover, and through a happy circumstance, I talked to my property manager about raising the rents $100, and he was like, oh yeah, I think we could do that. So unbeknownst to me, he raised another $100 on top of that, trying to compensate for added water and sewer costs, which are attached to the house right there. And so it ended up going for $200 more a month, and it got signed in October for a 2-year lease. So
how much is the passive income now on that property?
$54.
Whoo! Well, I would say that's a grand slam. Hey, I hope you enjoyed the video. Now, if you want to make passive income by investing in real estate or grow your investments to achieve financial freedom, well, consider joining the Real Estate Wealth Builders Mastermind with me. Now, in the mastermind, we have people that in as little as 18 months have bought enough properties, 12 rental properties, to make money for them passively for financial freedom, and you can too. It's not about having a lot of money to invest. It's about having access to the right information, the right community of people, and the right coaching. So if you're interested in joining, I want you to check the link in the description and join us so that you become financially free by investing in real estate.